All right, hey everybody, welcome back to the Crave Show. We got Chris and myself, and our guest this week is the illustrious Rook Nelson from Skydive Chicago. How you doing, guys?
Doing great.
Yeah, doing good, man. Very, very happy to be here. Rook, it's really
Good,
nice to have you, man. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, appreciate the invite. Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
cool. Are you guys at home right now? I know Chris is at home because he's in the studio. Rook, you're at home.
In the
Skydive
basement.
Chicago. Yeah. How's Chicago this weekend?
It's good. The weather, the humidity's kind of knocked off, so the temperature is really nice. And we were just down in San Antonio the last couple of days, and it was 110 there, and it's just ridiculous hot. So it's nice to come home and not be in a sauna.
Were you were down here in San Antonio? I'm in Bernie, right outside of San Antonio is where I live.
Yeah, so we do some military work down in Hondo. I've been down
Yeah.
there a lot, and yeah, I was just down there the last 3 days. Flew back home yesterday and got here right at sunset. It was a nice flight, and it's hot down there.
Oh my goodness, it's so hot. So
Dude.
hot.
Yeah, and working outside on the airport, man, I felt bad for the guys. They were packing outside, and it was just miserable.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, what was it day before yesterday? It was like 111.
Yeah, yeah. We got to leave there about noon, so I was fueling the airplane in Hondo at about 12:15, and it was hot.
Man.
I'm in
Well,
Arizona right now. It's
I'm
still
guessing
like
that
that.
Yeah.
they they probably put you up somewhere, but if you're ever down here and need a place to stay, man, you're always welcome to stay with us, man. I'd love to
Yeah, I
have you.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's cool. I didn't. So you come down here pretty often for that?
Yeah, a few times a year.
Okay.
We That's one of the popular ones they go to. The airport in Hondo is an old Air Force base, and it's like 1,200 acres. It's gigantic, and there's nothing there. So it suits well for when they want to jump barrels or, do offsets and all kinds of crazy stuff that they do. So it's kind of a nice in the middle of nowhere place for them to do that.
What aircraft are y'all usually working out of?
They contract my Skyvans.
Oh, okay. So you fly yourself down here with the planes and
Yep.
then take care of them the whole time. That's cool.
hmm
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And are you just doing training with them, just working with them to get better?
Yeah, I mean it's a reservist, so they're checking the boxes on their currency, and obviously we help them out getting their ratings. A lot of them, the guys have, like I've seen them gone from a few jumps to getting their tandem ratings to helping them get their AFF ratings, canopy courses, and while I at face value I'm just the airplane guy, there's a little bit more to it where whatever they need in the skydiving realm, we can help facilitate that, finding coaches, whatever, alter ego, flight one. Um, And then even as far as I found, they wanted to do some PPG training, and I found them a PPG guy to help facilitate some of that training for them. So it's kind of
What is that?
everything.
PPG? I don't know what that is.
Power paragliding.
Oh, nice. Yeah. So like
Yeah,
paramotor.
yeah, paramotoring pretty much. There was like some order where they were going to potentially use those for insertion tactics. I don't know if it's going to come to fruition or not, but they wanted to be ahead of the power curve and get some training in. So found him a buddy down in Texas, obviously that did it, and he came. He was his first military contract, so I coached him in how to act with these guys because, as you know, most people that do coaching aren't quite military-ish, so you got to just kind of make sure they shower and clean up and look presentable, and it's all about building relationships and making sure that you're not embarrassing the majors, and you get repeat work for them. So uh, I yeah, I'm glad I made the relationship with them, and he made him a bunch of money, and it's been good ever since.
That's fantastic, man.
Yeah.
Are you able to share with me who that? I wonder if I know the guy that did the paramotoring.
Yeah, and I knew you were going to ask me that question, and I'm actually drawing a blank at his
Oh,
name,
that's
but
all
I'll
right.
remember it before the show's over. And I know.
Yeah, no big deal.
Yeah.
My oldest son, he's 20 now, but about 4 years ago, he and I both together we got our. I mean, there's no license, but we went through our training and learned how to paramotor together, and man, just had a lot of fun. We haven't got to do it very much lately, but man, it's so fun. It's really fun.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. We got into it a long time ago. A pilot of mine, Dave Schwartz, got one, and I had one, and Mickey Nuttall got one. And I remember we had one of the Rebel guys came over to. He was living in South Chicago, and he came over and gave us some training. And I had to leave for a staff outing, so my training was like 15 minutes long, where Mickey got like an hour and a half. And then the next day I was like, Mick, what did he teach you? He's like, just run and floor it. I'm like, man, there had to be more to it than that, right? And that was
Don't
pretty
pick
much
up your
it. And
feet.
so, yeah, I remember like, because on a paraglider, there's like 5 different risers and there's all these little trim tabs and everything on. I still to this day have no idea what those are for. You know, I know left goes left, right goes right. But, you know, people ask me like, oh, what kind of wing do you have? How do you trim it? This and that. And I'm like, man, I just floor it. Just run and floor it.
That's awesome. Yeah. Are you familiar with down here the Guadalupe River?
I'm not, no.
Okay, it runs right through here, through Bernie, where I live, and Kerrville, where I grew up. Anyway, the headwaters of the Guadalupe River is just about 70 or 80 miles northwest of San Antonio, and it runs down all the way almost pretty much to the coast. And so I've been telling my son Corbin, I've been telling him, man, we need to get us a couple of paramotors and go up to the headwaters of the Guadalupe and just make like a 7-day trip where we fly in the mornings and just fly along the river, and then have my wife in our Suburban or a truck, whatever, kind of our running truck, you know, and just meet us at campsite to campsite, and we just fly all the way down the river. I think it'd be so fun.
Yeah, Dave, I brought my paramotor down to Florida, and Dave and I did a really cool flight over the intercoastal. We probably went like 4 or 5 miles down the beach. We actually flew through a wedding, which I felt terrible about, but I didn't know what was going on, you know, and it was super fun. Like one of the funnest, most memorable flights I've done on it. And yeah, then we just kind of set it in the corner, and I probably should sell mine now, but it's just collecting dust. And it's just one of those things that every time I think about selling it, I think about those flights that I've done, and I'm like,
yeah,
maybe one day I'll dust it back off.
Yeah, man. Well, if you do get around to selling it, let me know. I'll try to save up my dollars and be ready for you.
Yeah, for sure.
So Rook,
cool, man. Well,
sorry. I wanted to get on to, just because we always end up doing this. We talk, but there's a whole bunch of people. I think a lot of the people who listen to the podcast are newer jumpers. And so Rook, if you don't mind, whatever you feel like giving for like the history of Rook, then just to, because I know a lot of stuff that younger jumpers probably don't know, and I'm going to start quizzing you about that. And, but you know, you can give your own for a second.
Yeah, for a second. All right. That's all I got is 1 second. Yeah. So, you know, we got into skydiving as a family business. I'm a 3rd generation jumper. My grandfather was in the 82nd Airborne. Told enough stories that motivated my dad to, when he was 16 years old, forged his waiver and did his first jump in Hinckley, Illinois, and fell in love with it. And him and his brother Carl just jumped a bunch and really loved it. And, you know, skydiving was a bit different back then, where it was really like, it was a social club and a skydiving club. And it was like, you know, they had this fraternity called the Freak Brothers because they had long hair, and you know, it was coming from this military style, you know, accuracy kind of realm to RW to kind of freak flying or sit flying. And you know, they coined the term Freak Brothers. They had a huge fraternity, and the thousands of people that, you know, joined their club like Pops or whatever. And along the way, he started doing some big events, and just like what we do for Summerfest, you know, he did Freeport and Bigfoot, and started kind of that boogie circuit. We by no means started the boogies. I think the first one was in Richmond, Indiana, with the Stewart family, and you know, from there, just kind of blossomed up. And his brother was killed in the late 70s, early 80s, and then, you know, he started a drop zone in skydives in Sandwich, Illinois. It kind of broke away from Hinckley, where he started, and started his own, and ran that up until 1988. And then he went and worked for the government for a little while, and then got out from his government work. And then in 1993, we started Skydive Chicago at a different location where we are now. And in 1994, I did my first solo jump. I made my first skydive in 1984 when I was 4. And the story goes, I forgot to take the trash out, and so they just told me what I was going to do for the rest of my life. But having a child now, I was probably driving my mother crazy, and she was just probably wanting me to get out of the office that she was at, and I probably was asking her to skydive. She's like, "Go ask your dad." And my dad, being like the adventurous person that he is, took me for a skydive.
At
And it
4
was
years old?
before, yeah, 4 years old.
That is
And it was
crazy.
before tandem. And people are like, well, how did you do that? In 1984, things were way different than they are now, right? Like it's not even a comparison. But as I mentioned, it was before tandem. So they had this hang gliding harness that was built for my sister when she was really young. And it was just basically interwoven webbing stitched in a few spots so she could get attached to my dad that went hang gliding. And so he took that same harness and he just ran carabiners on the top and then basically 550 cord at the waist, and just tied me to him and carabinered me to him. And people ask me if I remember the jump, and I'm like, well, what did you remember when you were 4? I'm not much. But oddly, I remember the moment before the jump when they had me in that harness, because it was just webbing, it was cutting into my legs. So like my legs were going numb and they were shaking me all over the place. Like, oh, it's not going to fall out. Cool. But I remember I was like getting real fussy because my leg started to hurt. And then, you get pins and needles in your leg. So they literally ran over to the packing mat and they ripped a piece of carpet padding off of the floor where they used to pack the parachutes. And then they shoved it in my leg pads. And I don't have the picture, but the picture, you can see the carpet padding like in my leg pads. And I remember that part because it sucked. And then, and yeah, we went up to like 9,000 feet. He did like a 15-second delay and we landed. And then I did a handful more jumps between the ages of 4 and 6. And then parents said, you got to get straight A's on your report card. And I've never worked so hard in my life. And when I was 14 years old, I did it. And then I never got straight A's again.
Wow.
Because I started jumping and my interest and my motivation went elsewhere. But it was fun, and yeah, it's crazy to think that I've been jumping for 30 years, or solo jumping for 30 years, right? I've been skydiving almost, I guess, 40 now, right? Yeah, and it's still a gas. It's still fun. Although I'm more on the business side now. Like I stopped full time competing in 2019. Had a great time with Core and the teammates, and won a bunch of things, and got a lot of memories and a lot of special moments from competition life. And I can't believe I want to tell JRuss this, but like what I've kind of learned in the competition realm is that winning is an offset of just not letting your teammates down, and it's trying to find the right teammates to really find that chemistry. And I'm going to try 110%, not to beat the other people, but just not to let the person that across from me down, right? Like I don't want to be the one that fucks it up and we don't lose and we lose, right? Like I want to make the team proud. And once that started happening, and we won by a lot, and so much that it was almost not fun. When you're winning by 100 points, it's not as much fun. But I will say to this day, one of the most enjoyable competition I've ever been into, we lost, and JRuss was on that team as well. But man, it was an absolute battle. Every single round, I think. Well, like I think they got us for a couple of the rounds, but every single round we would get out of it was a tunnel meet in Toronto, and we would get out of the tunnel and the lead would change, and it was such a battle. And then we got down by like 6 points, and then there was a round where it was all randoms, and it was just a burner round. And we were just kind of like, well, we just might as well go for it. And we got out and we set a world record, and we got the lead by 2 points, and it was so much fun. And I mean, like I said, we ended up losing because in the last round we crashed into each other just trying to go too fast, probably. But man, to this day, that was my favorite competition. And uh, yeah, it's been such a fun ride since. And I, while I miss the training and I miss the competition, like I do enjoy hanging out with my family more and not hurting every day from jumping and training. And but it's fun, and it's tough to do a team. because it requires a lot of commitment, a lot of time, sacrifice. And, unfortunately, if you win, you don't win money. You get an attaboy, and you got to be okay with that. But if you look at removing just the winning part of it, and then what was the journey to get there, and embrace that, it really is. It's pretty cool.
So we lost JRuss. I think he's having some connection issues. I'm sure he'll get back on in a minute. But
Okay.
well, he's texting me. Let me see what he's saying. Oh, he's got a huge storm going through where he's at, and they lost power. So okay, I'm sure he'll try to get back on.
That'll do it.
So that competition that you were just talking about, you said your favorite one. Where was it? Did you say Canada?
Yeah, that was an indoor world meet or World Cup in Canada.
Okay.
And I'm not making excuses right now, but you communicate with the teams that are going to be there. You always, hey, you guys are going to be to this meet, you're going to be to this meet. And we had trained a whole bunch of outdoor stuff because we were just coming from another world something or whatever, where we really trained a lot of outdoor, because the French told us that they weren't going to the indoor one. So we're like, all right, let's focus on outdoor. It doesn't seem like there's going to be too much competition. And then, of course, the French team was at the tunnel, and they had been at the tunnel for 30 days before the meet, training every single day. And, okay. All right.
All right. I see how it is. I see how it is.
I wanted, that's not the way I want to win.
Yeah.
And,
well, so that's
there,
pretty,
still,
that's pretty cool that they were there training so hard and you still guys almost eked it out.
Yeah, it was just fun. Like I said, winning by 100 points is not as much fun as just battling it out every single time.
Yeah.
Like I feel like when you watch most major league sports, when it gets to the Super Bowl or the Cup, the Stanley Cup or the World Series, it's oftentimes the teams that are just perfect. It's not that there's a team that's so much better than the other team, right? It's the one that doesn't mess up.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt, we messed up and therefore we lost the meet. However, man, it was fun. It was so much fun to just every single round get out of there and just be so jazzed, and every single round going in there and just being like, I'm gonna fucking crush this. You know what I mean? Like I'm not letting you guys down. I'm here. I'm present. I'm 110%. And the funny thing was about core, and they don't do it they started to do it again, but I came from this kind of methodology that, like, when you mess up, as soon as you land from the jump, you owe 10 push-ups. Like if you busted a point with your rig on in the hot sun, 10 push-ups, because there's got to be accountability. And if you don't hold yourself accountable and we bust you in the debrief, you owe 20 push-ups. So at this tunnel meet, we started to do, because we do it at the meets too, right? There's no reason that at the meet you're not holding yourself accountable.
Oh, wow.
And we started to do it at the tunnel meet right as we got out of the antechamber. And then we realized that because like who's doing push-ups after a round, right?
Yeah,
but
right.
we realized that if the judges see that, they're going to know that one of us screwed up and they're going to be looking for the bust. So then we realized that, well, that was a dumb idea. So then we would like break out of there, go back to a team room, and then we would do our push-ups there.
Oh, wow. Well, so you kind of answered it, but I wanted to know, what was the atmosphere and the feel amongst your team members in that competition?
It was great. Like we were obviously kind of a little bit bummed that we got lied to, and that the French have been training there forever. Not forever, but 30 days, because they specifically said they weren't going. And then obviously they did. Very, very French of them. So that kind of started the meet off a little bit like with a rub. But again, like, man, we're here to win. We're the winning team, and we're going to go down swinging. And like, I'd rather lose and hand over the championship than just not compete and forfeit it. Right.
Yeah.
Like I want to battle till I lose versus just cowardly walking away. And so, to me, like it was fun, and we were there. We had nothing to lose, right? They were the ones that trained. Obviously we had the former championships to lose, but man, we were there to win, and we gave it our all. And unfortunately, on like one of the pass-throughs, there was a collision, and we messed up. Just like the top teams, it's not the one that goes faster, it's the one that is perfect.
Yeah. And what year was that? Do you remember?
Oh man. 20 something. I want to say like 15, 16, no, maybe even 17. It was maybe 16 or 17. I think it was right in there.
um, to go back to something you said like quite a few minutes ago, you mentioned the people that started that the very first boogie. What'd you say, and what year do you think that was?
Oh, wow. So, um, that was the Stewart family. And that was in Richmond, Indiana. And they were the first ones to like invite a whole bunch of people to their airport and bring in big airplanes and do what we consider what a boogie is today, right?
Yeah.
Except like, when we do Summerfest, it's all of our airplanes, it's all of our facility, and we just bring people here. Well, back then, this kind of thing wasn't in existence. So they would bring, they would invite all their friends from Ohio and Minnesota and Wisconsin, and hey, we're going to bring DC-3s here, and we're going to jump, we're going to have a good time, and we're going to boogie, and that's fun. Like I love production work, and that's why we do so many events, because I like that, the pressure of doing events and the show must go on, and then you can be proud of the brand that we represent. And plus, like less and less people are doing it. I feel like boogies are kind of in a wave where they're a ton of work, and if you don't have the right passion for them, it's quick. You can quickly burn out. If we look at the Carolina Fest that just made a comeback after being shuttered for a handful of years, the Richmond Boogie went away. Couch Freaks is just now coming back after being shuttered for a long time. So I feel like in skydiving, we need to kind of keep things happening and make it cool and keep these events going, because as a skydiver, man, it would be a bummer to have your career where you never get to go to a boogie. Like it would be a bummer that just you always kind of went to your drop zone and didn't travel and didn't explore. Because, man, one of the coolest things about skydiving is going to a different place and jump. And the classic question is, what's your favorite jump, or where's your favorite place to jump? Well, my favorite place to jump is home. A, because it's easy, it's free, and I get to sleep in my bed at night. But we've gone all the way from, we did the Maldives boogie with Rich Grimm. That was absolutely amazing, right? Like, who wouldn't want to jump over the Maldives? And I've jumped in Akita, Japan, sitting on the tailgate of a Chinook helicopter, just being like, wow, this is real life. Just recently we were in Sebastian, and I was teaching Tom Cruise how to hang from the basement of a Skyvan, and I thought I was in a Scientology film. So like there's not a one place that's cool, but just the advantage of being able to go all over the place and jumping, man, that's cool.
Yeah, that really is. And I actually haven't gone to very many boogies in my skydiving career so far. I got my license. I did my very first jump in 03, but then I didn't get my license until 2013, but we were living overseas. And so I wasn't really able to jump until we finally moved back in 2015. I started jumping a little bit, and then really like 2017, 2018 is when I really started jumping a lot. Um, and so I would, I hear all these stories about boogies in the old days and how
it was different.
kind of the Wild West. And
oh yeah.
And so
and not even like in my early days, but like some of the stories from my dad and his friends, and just like, dude, it was like a movie. You know what I mean? Like I'll give you a quick snippet of like some of the stories. They used to handcuff the pilot to the airplane so that he would be there in the morning to fly jumpers for them. Like that kind of stuff. You're like, can you imagine if you did that? There was a boogie that just made a comeback, and I was talking to my pilot Dave Schwartz, who's been around for a while, and there used to be co-ed showers at this boogie where you would walk up to the shower thing and you would spin this little thing, and it would tell you what side to go to, and that you just went in the showers, and can you imagine if you did that today? I mean, there's no way.
Man,
like there's boogies where I remember that you could be drinking in the loading area, and you're
no
just
way.
like, can you imagine if you did that today? You're like, no way.
Wow. Yeah.
Man,
Well, I mean, so like I would hear these stories, and, like I said, I really haven't been to that many boogies, and the ones that I've been to are just pretty much right around here in Texas. Just, Dallas, Houston, San Marcos, and, oh no, not even Houston. But, so when JRuss invited me to come up to Summerfest and organize, I was super excited, and I felt very honored that he would ask me and that I'd have a chance to do that. But honestly, in the back of my mind, I was a little bit nervous. I was like, man, there's like 800 or so, 700, however many, skydivers going to be there. I hear all these stories about boogies. I'm like, man, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to have fun. But
Yeah.
since I've been back from Summerfest, Rook, I've told multiple people that 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 boogie Summerfest is organized and put together so well. Like I never felt like there was anything dangerous going on. I never felt scared. I never felt like things were out of control. I never felt like it was chaotic. It wasn't like all these zoo dives. It was organized, safe, professional. Like I've told so many people, and I'm so glad that I went, because exactly what you said a minute ago, to get to go to another place, that's fun. Like going somewhere new and jumping somewhere new, that's fun. But I just feel like the friends that I made,
Yeah.
and because I felt safe and because I felt like it was well organized and put together and I could relax and I could feel safe, like in a skydiving environment that I wasn't familiar with, that allowed me also to relax and make friends and
Mm.
have fun jumping with them. And that was truly, like, that was fantastic. And I've told a lot of people about that. And I will continue to encourage people, you need to go to Summerfest. It's not any story, because I mean, even people nowadays say, oh, I don't go to boogies. They're too dangerous. They're too whatever. I'm like, no, Summerfest is not like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that there was a shift in boogies, not too long ago, but I remember I was organizing a jump and, I was just, who wants to do a head down jump? And I'd, get people and be like, hey, you guys want to jump? And they're like, well, what are you doing? I'm like, what do you mean? What am I doing? They're like, well, are you going straight down? Are you doing vertical? Are you going, are you angling? Are you sequentialing? And I was like, I've never been asked for like a resume of a skydive prior. And what it really meant was like, man, people don't just want to jump, right? Like I see that not even just to the boogie sense, but I see that in everyday skydiving, that people they want to make their jumps count. They want to learn something. They want to be challenged and they want to leave whatever they're doing a better skydiver. So I feel that, Summerfest, we try to, when you come there, you're going to leave a better jumper. And that requires being safe, having enough organizers where you don't have to just take everybody. Everybody kind of has their slot, whether it's beginning, intermediate. Everybody lies about being a ninja. And you can slot in, and the goal is that you leave a better skydiver, right? And then along the way that we've been doing it for 23 years, we should be better at it. And I want to give a lot of credit to Tracy, because she's like the woman behind the curtain that really kind of makes it all work, right? We all have our jobs, but she's the one that kind of brings it together and kind of puts the glue to it, if you would.
Yeah.
And she's great at what she does. And I'm so valuable. I'm so grateful that she's on our team and that she's a passionate skydiver that, if she needs to go to the airport and pick somebody up, she would do it. And then she would figure out how she doesn't have to do it next year. um, but I appreciate that, man. I appreciate you coming up. And yeah, we're proud of Summerfest.
You
I
should
think
be.
that
You absolutely should be.
yeah. And, the testament of that is this winter when it sold out in 60 hours, man. Like,
Yeah.
that was awesome.
Yeah.
Like, of course, me being the business guy, I'm like, how do we get more people? But what it really does is like, for Skydive Chicago, that's a very manageable number where, you don't have to wait. Because there'd be some Summerfest where it was a 2-hour wait to get on an airplane. And if somebody just comes for the second weekend and they pay $100 registration and they get 2 jumps in and they had to wait 2 hours to get on an airplane and then they had to wait 40 minutes to get a sandwich. And, it's just, it's wait fest. And that's not what we want. We want
Yeah.
everybody to go home and just like you did, you want to tell all your friends how awesome it was. Yeah, it was cool, but we just waited a lot. So we made the tough decision to cut the number or to cap the number at 600. And it was really a good decision for us. That and using Burble to manifest, I think, were two of the best changes that we've done in the last recent years. Um, And I think it's I want to thank all the organizers like yourself and the wingsuit organizers and all the people that put a lot of time and dedication to do it, because we don't pay a lot of the organizers to come up there and do it, and it's a labor of love, and I feel like it's cutting your teeth when you're up there because it is a job. I mean, it you don't come to one of my dreams is to attend a Summerfest as a participant and just not have any responsibility, because I think it would be a fantastic time. uh, but I don't know that maybe when Rocket takes over and I could be sitting by the pond drinking margaritas all day.
Yeah.
uh, but until that day, there it is a army of people that make Summerfest happen,
Yeah.
and it's not just me, it's not just Tracy. It is, and so many like little deals and favors, and hey, I can I borrow your airplane? I'll send you one. You know what I mean? Just little things that happen along the way that really make Summerfest what it is.
Yeah. How many? Well, first of all, I think my average wait time to get on a load was probably right at like 28 minutes. It was about. I
Hmm.
mean, I had one or two that were a little bit longer, but I never had any that felt like I was waiting for a long time because I was packing and then I was getting my next group together and then
Hmm.
walking the jump. And so, honestly, for me, it was like the wait times were perfect. Um,
Yeah,
it was long
yeah,
enough
it's
that I could relax and get my group together and plan a jump. And about that time, it's like, hey, let's get geared up and get out there.
yeah. One of my favorite things to do at Summerfest, and a lot of people will comment on this, is that I'll like I usually get like a few hours of jumping here and there, right? Like I
Hmm.
try to preload a bunch of work in the beginning, and then because I like to work on the front lines, only because I think it's a good example for the team. Like, hey, the boss is out here digging a trench with us, and but then I'll also build in a little bit of time to go jump. And historically, I always just get on a load by myself. I'll get to the loading area. I'll find somebody who doesn't have anybody to jump with, and I'll jump with them. Uh, a side story is that I've also been told no before, and I'm just standing there at the loading area, like, okay, I guess I will do something
Oh
else,
no,
which is awesome, right?
dude.
But this year, I did have a few hours to go down to the loading area and jump, and what there was no stragglers, meaning that the number of organizers that we had was a really good ratio to be able to look out after everybody, right? Because
Yeah.
I ended up joining groups that were already being organized, which normally in the past it doesn't happen because there's always some stragglers. But
Hmm.
I got to do, I think, 5 jumps, and every one of those jumps I jumped with an organized group, and I was like, wow, I think we got it right.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So what was the most what was the most number of planes you had running at one time?
Yeah, so typically it's 5, and then I think the busiest day was 96 loads. We would have easily blown that out of the water on Saturday, except Saturday afternoon, the clouds came in.
Yeah.
So I think at like 4 o'clock, we got shut down for a good portion of the afternoon. But we would have sailed past 100 and something easily.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, because the Saturdays usually have the tandem elements. So they're taking up some of the airplanes. The normal weekend crew are out. But 5 airplanes is a good number to use. So where you're not having to wait in the air. Like there's, of course, going to be some go arounds here and there, but usually we can get 5 to kind of run nonstop without having to hold or circle uh, we found that to be a good number for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, would you mind sharing with the listeners? Because I was on the plane that we had to ride down because it had those. I don't know. I honestly don't know what the issue was that caused it, but was that Saturday or Sunday?
The Skyvan?
The Skyvan that rode down,
Yeah, for
and
sure.
I mean, to me, it's super interesting because the way the pilot had to land the plane, I was super
Yeah.
impressed. I'm not a pilot. I don't know anything about it, but I was super impressed. And I've told like my family and stuff. Do you mind sharing with
Yeah,
the
for
listener? I
sure.
think they'll just think it's very interesting.
Yeah, so in the Skyvan, or in the Twin Otters, the way that it produces electricity is from a starter generator, meaning like the thing that starts the airplane once the plane started spins like a alternator would on a car. So it creates power for the airplane. And there's a left and a right bus, just like the right engine powers the right bus, the left engine powers the left bus. So that way, like if one of the generators goes out, you don't lose all of your electronics, right? So you lose part of it, and then you can tie the buses together to where the left side can power all of the electronics. Unfortunately, and I don't want to throw the pilot under the bus because you're right, he did do a great job given the circumstance, but he didn't recognize that the generator had kicked offline. And they're 1968 airplanes, so sometimes stuff breaks,
Sure.
and sometimes you gotta notice things and tie buses together. Unfortunately, he didn't notice that the generator had kicked offline. So then what's happening is that it's basically just running off of the battery, and then when the battery died, because he had been running it for a couple hours, he lost all of the power. And so then when the battery was smoked, before he recognized what was going on, he lost all the power because he didn't tie the buses together.
All the electrical power.
All the electrical power.
I mean,
correct.
engines that power was still good.
Yeah. So the cool thing about airplanes is that they can run with no electrical power at all, right? Once they're started on a turbine, you can shut all the power off of it and it'll stay running because there's an engine driven fuel pump that'll drive the fuel to the motor. It's a high pressure pump.
Like a diesel motor.
A turbine motor, yeah. But basically it's done by design. So you could lose all your electric power and you're not going to just lose all the engines, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So had he coupled the buses together, he could have avoided that problem, but he just didn't notice it. We're in boogie mode and we're going fast, and he had to land without any electrical power. What was funny is he got on the radio to the air boss, that's where we were, and he's like, "Hey, I just lost my GPS." I'm like, "You lost your? What are you talking about?" He's like, "Oh, my transponder just went off." And then that was the last we heard from him. And we're like, and we kept trying to call him on the radio. We're like, "What's going on, man? What's going on?" Then and all of a sudden he comes in landing, and he came in fast because he had no flaps, right? Because he had no hydraulic motor he had no power. So he landed fast, and then when I saw that, I instantly was like, he's got no power. And so then he turned around. He used what we call on the hydraulic system, there's a standby emergency accumulator that gives you one last shot of hydraulic power so you could potentially tap the brakes or you could put your flaps down or something. He used that to turn the airplane around, and then he just pulled over and shut the plane down. And, on a quick diagnostics, we realized that the battery was smoked. We realized the generator had failed. We put a new battery in it. We fired the airplane up. Good to go.
Yeah. Yeah. So he was basically, he had to steer the plane. He had to steer the plane with the engines. Is that correct? Like with the variable thrust from the engines. And then he had to use reverse thrust to stop. Is that correct?
Yep. Reverse and then differential braking. And then he also had that shot in the accumulator that probably helped get that nose wheel turned around. Okay. And then with, some braking, differential power, he was able to get it spun around.
Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't scary on the plane by any means. It was just like we're almost to altitude, getting so close. And he's like, "Everybody sit down. We're going down. We're going to land." And we're like, "What?" And then when we came in to land it, I thought, man, we seem like we're going kind of fast, but not scary by any means. And then we landed kind of hard, and we're like, okay. And then when he told us, or when we heard all this, I was like, wow, that's pretty impressive. He landed a full load without all the bells and whistles that he normally would have.
Yeah. He, like any good flight department, you become a verb when you do mistakes like that. And so you learn a lot when that happens because we remind you every day. So I think something else broke later in the week. And I remember the pilot coming up being like, "Well, I'm no longer the verb."
Yeah, that's awesome. That's funny.
All right.
JRuss, it's
online?
Nice to have you on the show, man.
Yeah. So this was totally out of a movie or something because, there's a massive, I'm in Eloy, there's a massive storm that just went through, rain and lightning and thunder. But for me, I'm going to have to go rewatch this because I got to Rook saying, "I can't believe I'm going to say this in front of JRuss. The thing that I've learned about competition is," it stopped. I'm like, well, I got to go back and figure out what Rook has learned about competition.
It's okay. I've said all the nice things about you. So now that you're back, I can just throw you under the bus again.
Yeah, perfect. Did you get all through the history of Rook?
I kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Sort of. Like, where did we stop off at? The boogies, Summerfest. I guess Like I said, I started jumping in 94, got all my ratings, did a bunch of students and tandems and AFFs, got thrown up on, got to do a lot of AFFs. And as a single kid doing it students, that's kind of fun. And in 2003, my dad was involved with a collision with another jumper at about 300 feet. And unfortunately, he hit the ground pretty hard, and the other jumper hit the ground pretty hard, and he ended up passing away from the injuries that he was sustained. And the other jumper broke his leg, and I was instantly promoted to owner of Skydive Chicago in partnership with my sister. I think I was 23 years old. I had blue hair, and I was living life to the fullest, traveling the world and having a good time. And I made the choice, and either we were going to just sell it all, or we're going to do this. And kind of reflected on it for the short time that I had. I think he passed away on a Thursday, and then we never stopped jumping. I think we paused for a funeral. I think we did the funeral like in 2 days later or 3 days later. It was really quick. Uh, I'm sorry, we did the funeral like a week later, but we never stopped jumping. We kept going, and that was tricky. And I remember saying to myself, like, okay, just don't mess up big enough that you can't recover from. And so, like, I didn't really do big plays. I just kind of kept to the status quo. My sister and I were just doing what we felt was right. Doing the best we could, because the media was brutal. Like, here you are trying to recover from your dad's passing, and then the media was just all over it. Skydive Chicago owner dies, and here you are trying to market the tandems, and that's tough. Like, you're having to relive that as you're trying to keep your business alive. Um, and then flash forward to, I think, 2005 or six. My sister and I were struggling being partners, and a lot of people were mom and dad and us. And if they didn't get the answer they wanted from me, they went to her, and vice versa. So she was just like, hey, I need to not do this. And so I bought her out, and then been doing it ever since. And I have fortunate to where have some really, really good people on the team. Anthony, my GM, is probably the best in the business. And for me, when people aren't born into the sport or have a lot of history in it that exude so much passion into it, like, those are the people I want to be around. And those lifers in the sport for no other reason other than the fact that they love the community, they love being around it, and they love skydiving. And that to me is motivating and rad. And most of my team, maybe minus my grounds manager, who hasn't jumped yet but threatens to. He's new of this year, and he's doing a great job too. But we'll get him there. And it makes it fun. It's like doing cool things with cool people, and it's fun. I like doing it.
Cool. How do you feel? I mean, there's a couple questions that came up there. I don't know how much we want to relive, but I remember I was getting coaching from Mike when your dad had his accident, just quite a while ago, and I remember just thinking I'm a little bit older than Rook. He's happy to point that out if we ever get to the specifics of that. But even at the time, I think I was 31 or 32. I remember just thinking, like, man, how do you pick that up and run with it? How do you keep that going, and just such a massive amount of responsibility that, I mean, I don't know about everybody that's listening, but when I was 23, I wasn't doing always the most responsible things. So, yeah, how do you pull that off? And I remember just thinking it was really impressive. And I was coming to Summerfest almost since the first year. I think I might have been there for the first year, and I kept showing up, and it kept happening. And just impressive. Rook, I wanted to touch on some of the stuff that you had done, if you didn't talk about it already, but with you and Mike and John, that I think that even though that you're very current, like, and I know it seems like whether you're passionate about it still, or you want to stay current, or a combination of both, like you're jumping with people all the time, which, we have a new teammate. We have a couple new teammates this year, but one of them, Andy, is from Arizona, and was just super, super impressed about like seeing you around the drop zone and talking to you, and that you're on the plane and you're organizing 10 spot. and that is something that people see, but especially our younger crowd, I wanted to revisit some of the stuff you've done in the past with those two guys, Mike and John, and your previous team, Alchemy. If you didn't
Yeah, for sure.
if you didn't talk about that.
So yeah, obviously, you know, in this career, skydiving kind of gravitated towards the free flying, and we started the first free fly team with TJ Langren and Jason Peters, and we called ourselves the Poor White Boys because that's what we were. and went to the first competition. I think it was Paris Nationals, and saw Olaf and Mike and those guys just crushing it. And what I learned from that is that you should only have one free round, not five, and that you need to just jump a lot and train and do that. And I don't know, for whatever reason, Mike and I kind of hit it off, and he invited me to come to Florida with him, and we started a team. And then we had Olaf with us, and then Olaf would kind of jump with us, kind of not. So it was a lot of Mike and I jumping, and then Olaf would show up. And I'll tell a funny story about Mike because it's so good. So one of the times Olaf, and I have a lot of respect for Olaf. He's coming to stay at my house for Hall of Fame, so he'll get a kick out of this story too. But so Mike and I would be training. We'd be doing like a bazillion jumps a day. That's all we did was skydive because we had no money. We didn't know how to do anything else. We would do every single load is what we would do. And we're on the plane, and Olaf joins us for a load. And Olaf's like, "Hey, man, we need to do a team handshake." I'm like, "Yeah, sure, let's do a team handshake." And then we need to breathe in, you know, like how some of the people breathe in on the free and the door or whatever. And so Mike and I put our hands in, and Olaf's doing this big Zen breathe in, and Mike farts. And he was a vegetarian, and it smelled so bad, like it made you want to vomit. Needless to say, we never breathed in or high-fived again. And I instantly knew Mike and I were going to be good friends at that moment. So flash forward to where we wanted a teammate that would jump with us. And granted, I traveled many continents and competitions with Olaf and Mike, and we won a bunch of stuff. And then Mike and Olaf maybe didn't always see eye to eye, and I was just happy to be jumping for free. So we asked John to be a part of the team, and then John, Mike, and I went and just crushed it again. And so this was like right when the tunnels first started coming out. And in Orlando, I guess I could say this now because I don't really care about iFly that much, but we would go to iFly and we would first train all day in Sebastian. Mike got a deal for us to train in Sebastian. So we would train all day. We would do 16 plus jumps a day. We would drive an hour and a half to iFly. And then the people that were working at iFly in that day would give us like the wink, wink. They would close the wind tunnel. An hour later, we would go back inside and we would fly for 4 to 5 hours every single night. And I'm like, I mean, it's like 4 a.m. And I'm thinking to myself, like, they got to know that we're running this tunnel 5 hours every night. Cause we literally did that for a month. I'm like, they got to know. And I guess they never did. Cause we flew a lot. Like, I can't even imagine trying to do that now. I like to do 16 jumps and then drive an hour and a half, fly 5. I don't even know when we were sleeping. And then oddly enough, we got sponsored by iFly. And then we would go there and they would give us all the free time we could do. Anytime the tunnel wasn't booked, we could go fly the tunnel. So we would literally be sleeping on the bench, and they would tap us on the shoulder and they'd say, "Hey, there's 10 minutes." And then we would fly 10 minutes, and then we would go crawl under the bench again and sleep for 20 minutes. And they tap us and we would go train again. But it really kind of opened the door of like, man, we did a lot of cool stuff. Like, we were doing back-to-back stuff. Like, we would just really be able to practice and try and expand what we could do, because it wasn't just 40 seconds on a jump. Like, we could really like hone in these skills. And to this day, I think our free round would still place in the top 3 if we went and did it again. It would probably break Mike and I in half, but we could go try it and maybe podium, you know, I don't know. And so, you know, from there, Mike and John and I were just, you know, we were good buddies. We vibed really well. I relate that team a lot to Steph, JRuss, Dusty. And, you know, I think that it had the same kind of chemistry where you just wanted to not let each other down. And as a result, you did really well, and we traveled the world and we had a lot of fun. And, I've been asked this, and I told this in a James podcast too. Like, man, you must be so competitive, and it's like at first I don't think I really was. I just like to jump a lot, and the way to jump a lot was to be on a team. And so then you win a couple times, and then you're like, well, that's kind of fun too. And then I think the competitiveness just came because I wanted to jump a lot, and then I started to win, and then I'm like, well, let's do more of that, And I get asked from time to time to be on like pickup belly teams just for fun. I'm like we're not going to try to win, and so it's a little bit of a struggle for me just to do it. Like when I get out there and I put a jumpsuit on, like you know, when I show up to nationals and I'm saying, "Hey, man, I'm so glad you're here," there should be subtitles of like, "I don't know why you showed up because I'm going to beat you so bad you're going to quit skydiving," right? Like that's me at the nationals. But I don't think it was always like that, and I think it's less and less now because why I don't think I'm done. I've had a good career in competition skydiving, and I enjoyed every minute of it, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Cool.
Maybe Rhythm might need me for something. Who knows?
I offered.
I told him I would quit everything I'm doing to join that team.
Yeah. Yeah. What's next for Scottish Chicago, Rook? We're going to talk about nationals and we're going to talk about the world meet. But like, what direction do you have going for Scottish Chicago other than like more of the best? I know that's kind of a generic question.
Yeah, right now is a bit of a crunch time for us because, like you mentioned, we're getting ready for nationals, and then obviously for some dumb idea, we decided to do a world meet not here. And then in between that, a Hall of Fame, and then in between that, take over the cafe. So, needless to say, it's a bit stressful on the Nelson residents and the team here. So next year, honestly, I really want to kind of strip away a lot of stuff, and I want to solely focus on the 200 way. Like it means I lose sleep over this, and as crazy as that sounds, like I went through a bit of health stuff this winter, and obviously the very first things I'm thinking about is I'm wondering if I'm going to die. And the surgery was like, man, I really have a lot to do with my family, and I but then in the other, like very close to that was like, I need to fucking build this 200 way. And so maybe that's what made me recover so fast, is that I had this unfinished business thing. So I kind of told Tracy, like, man, I don't want next year to be so hectic. I want to be able to dedicate a lot of time into doing this. And I feel if I can't get it on this try, that I might have to try to let somebody else do it because, it is what it is. But I think we're trending towards a better direction on success, meaning there's a lot more training going on. There's a new design, and I think that people that have been on the journey, I mean, it's been 10 years since the last record. I think the people that have tried out and have been on the last two attempts, man, there's a sense of eagerness to it, and I hope that they see that we're trying a new approach at it, with the new design, more camps, more training, and then obviously there's a 250 way that's going to be happening at the same time. So just really focusing in on putting all of STC energy into that event, which is at home. It's something that I'm very passionate about, and it's been a long time in the making to try to do this again. And like I said, I lose sleep over this stuff because, I guess it goes back to being competitive. Man, I hate losing, and the first time we tried the 200 way, I feel like we got cut short because of weather, and that was a bummer, right? Because it was kind of a what if, man. What if we would have got one more jump? What if we would have got one more day of weather?
We would have got it.
What if?
We would have
got it. Right?
Yeah.
We would have got it. And then this last time we did the full pull. We did all the jumps, and man, whatever it was, it's just a puzzle, and we couldn't get the pieces together. And it wasn't that we got hosed because of weather. It wasn't because of this. And then like the chatter at the end of it was just obnoxious, that this was the worst time of my life. I wasted all this money. They must not have the slot I do, because when I jump out of that airplane in the middle of the base and I watch 9 other airplanes jumping out after me, it's some of the coolest visuals you'll ever see on this planet. Like I'm jealous of Steph and her super floater slot because I think that would be one of the raddest visuals ever. I think Ryan Patrick did a great job when he jumped off with her and filmed her coming up to it. I thought that was some of the coolest footage ever. And again, I go back to the competition. Yeah, the 200 way is cool. If we get it, it's going to be an incredible feeling. But it's going to be rad. Like the struggles, the journey, the friendship, the places we went to get to that. It's so cliche, right? It's the journey, not the destination. But the older I get, I it's kind of true because we did the 164 way. I think we got it at 9 a.m, and we all kind of didn't know what to do. Like we did it the first jump, yay! What the fuck do we do now? You know what I mean? Like we just got drunk. I mean, I was hammered by like 10:30. I was so drunk. Yeah, that was a rough day. And the next day, and the next day, and I was that record. I wasn't into pop status yet, and so like I felt so bad for all the 40-year-olds that had to go do the pops record.
I was.
I was in no condition to do any sort of jumping. Now I'm in the pops category, so now I got. But lucky I'm 4 years sober from alcohol, so I think I'm going to keep it tidy enough to be able to be on that 4 pops record. But yeah, I mean, just to keep along the lines of Skydive Chicago, just to keep cool things happening. I think it's important for the sport of skydiving to continue on with Summerfest and Rookie Fest, and just like have inclusion events. Like no matter what you're doing, we want you to come here and spend a vacation, whether that's for an event or whether that's just a weekend where you get to hang out, do a cookout at Core Compound. Like I think that's all kind of those memory moments that are last a lifetime.
Cool. Chris?
Yeah.
I don't want to monopolize the questions.
No, that's cool. Has being like you were kind of thrown into business, like you said at 23, not what you were planning to do, especially at that moment. And so you've been doing that for 20 something years, I guess, 20 years or so.
Yeah. As I mentioned, like I was in skydiving. So I think that was my one savior, is that I wasn't like trying to be in a different career. And then all of a sudden pops passes and now I got to like pivot and get into skydiving. I was the kid out there jumping every weekend and doing that. And now I just had to sit at a desk more, which is still to this day the thing I don't like doing. But it's inevitable when you run a business, you got to sit behind a desk. But, I feel that, again, as I said, I didn't do any big plays, right? I just did status quo. I was just trying to pay bills. And what I quickly realized is that the winners suck because there was no cash flow. There was nothing. And, just trying to think of ideas of like what I could do in the winter. And, coming from my times in Sebastian with the team of Alchemy with Mike and John and the time that we spent there was just a random winter that I went down there and, I brought an otter with me. I literally made a post and I said, hey, if anybody wants to go to Florida, I'm going to go down there for the holiday event. You can just jump in the airplane and we'll go down there. And at the time, John Eddowes had the airplane contract there and he had a falling out with his partner and they froze all the assets. So they couldn't move any of the airplanes or any of the stuff Sebastian was using. And they quickly turned to me and said, hey, can we use your airplane? And I don't know where this came from, but I said, you can, but I want the contract. Because I was just down there on vacation. And all of a sudden, like out of nowhere, I'm motivated to take over this contract. And I didn't even have the airplanes to do it, right? I had 2 Twin Otters at the time. Like, what was I going to do? And somehow they said yes. We started flying the event there. And I went home to the bank. And I walked in there with this business plan that I had written on a piece of paper, basic, I didn't go to college. I just skydived since I was 14. And this very crude business plan on how I was going to make money and all these projections of what I thought I could do. And I walked out of there with $1 million. And I literally thought I had lucky underwear on. What I've known in my adult age is that they're like, here's this young kid that's going to pay us interest forever. So I quickly learned that I didn't have lucky underwear on. I was this ignorant kid that didn't know about interest. So yeah, I think I built the bank they just built because but I got $1 million and I went and bought an airplane. And that to me was a very powerful moment because like I did what my dad was doing, and then I figured out a way to get cash flow in the winter, and I expanded. And so I achieved what he did. And flashing back to 2 weeks before he passed away, as your parents would, they kind of know, they know how you think. And this might be some universe weird alignment thing, but 2 weeks before he passed away, he's like, Rook, you know this place wouldn't run without me. And I'm like, what does that mean? Like I carried drywall into this place. I was out there building runways. I was there in the trenches. And I was like, well, what does that mean? And then boom, he passes away. And, in reflection of that, what he did was he challenged me to not fail. And, when I got that Sebastian deal, like I checked the box on not failing. Like I did it. You know what I mean? He said the right words to challenge me, to keep me motivated, to keep me in it. And then I got beyond him when I opened Sebastian with the airplanes down there. And to me, it's my greatest business achievement because it got me cash flow year round. I was able to expand, buy more airplanes, and now I got 9 planes. I fly my family around in a King Air, and I love it. You know what I mean? It's good. I'm very successful from jumping out of airplanes, and that's cool. And it's hard to explain that to people, but there's a lot of people that helped me get here. And I try not to be the guy that sits on the podium. I'm still the person that'll get out and dig the trenches with the front lines. And that's think that's neat. Like you can be highly successful jumping out of planes because going to a bank and asking them for money to run a skydiving business, they're like, yeah, sure, I'll sell you a bridge. And a little precursor to that story about when I went into the bank, like I had gone to the bank 2 months earlier because I lived in a trailer and I wanted to build a house because I had gotten sick, and it was in the wintertime. We have no water because it's the campground, and I got food poisoning and I was throwing up in my toilet. Now you could fill the back of a toilet up with a 5-gallon jug and you can flush it, but I had done that so much like the pipe underneath the trailer froze. It was the worst night of my life, and I swore to that day I was going to get out of the trailer. Flash forward, I was like, hey, I want to build a house. Went in, bank denied me. I was only asking for like 200 grand. And they said no. 3 months later, I said, hey, can I get $1 million with this handwritten business plan? Yeah, sure. And I was just like, what? So, but it all worked out. And, I'm happy with the team and how everything's working, the brand that we represent, the people that we get to skydive with. And it's kind of I started living in a school bus. Now I live in a house finally.
So you said that when you took over that you kind of, at first you said you didn't do anything crazy. You kind of kept the status quo, but then you just told a story about going down to Sebastian, taking this plane, getting this contract, going. I mean, so you did. I mean, you took some risk, man. You did do some. I mean, that's pretty impressive.
Really it was just recognizing that not having cash flow in the winter sucked. Plus, being in Illinois sucked. So, like, what can we do here? And I still had relationships in Sebastian from living down there with the team. So when we went down there, like I knew everybody down there, and and Sebastian is kind of a weird job somewhere. Like back in then, it was like a little surf spot that they protected very, very wholeheartedly. It was a kind of a mafia to get in there. And if you went down there to enhance, it was better than going down there and taking over. So I just went down there to enhance, organized, did whatever. And then, like I said, I still to this day don't know why I said that. Have you ever said some dumb things or some smart things and you don't really know how that came out of your mouth? I still to this day don't know how that happened, but the universe said, say this, and I did it and, figured it out. And, like I said, that was the slingshot that got me to step outside of the comfort zone and grow and to get where I'm at today.
That's cool. That's cool, man.
Have you guys talked about, sorry that I missed so much, but like Heidi or Rocket Man or Heidi taking over the cafe or the last? No. No. See, I wasn't there to ask the questions.
Yeah, I think so. I have Rocket is my 6-year-old son who, for some strange reason, absolutely adores JRuss. Has a jumpsuit just like him. I don't know why he doesn't have a jumpsuit like mine. But, but it's cool. And I think I don't take for granted raising a kid on a drop zone. Like I was raised on a drop zone, and man, there's something real special about that. The difficulties come as a parent to try to keep them grounded, that most people don't walk out of their front door and are on their own 220 acres with 9 turbines and, this plethora of stuff. To try to keep them grounded is tough. But I also have hundreds of people that are just these loving, caring skydiving community that, look after them, play with them, share with them. And I think that's really cool. I think I don't take that for granted, because I know some kids have to grow up in some kind of rough spots, and Heidi is my wife. Her and I go volunteer at the school to read to kids, to underprivileged kids for their lunch. And basically the program is like, these kids have a messed up like home life, and you're just there to be a buddy for them. And we talk about video games, which JRuss might be really good at being one of these buddies, but you just try to be a buddy and a good influence to these kids. And I think about how my kids being raised and how these kids are being raised, and it's just like, man, he's got it made. You know what I mean? But I'm also the parent that's like, they always ask me, since I jumped at 4, am I going to take rocket jumping when he's younger? And I'm the parent that's like, man, you have to earn what you get. And so if I expect him to want to run this business, which if he doesn't, that's perfectly okay. But if he does, in this society, in this culture of like such on demand, where like everything is instant, everything is now, it's such disposable because there's this plethora of stuff. Like, how do you appreciate things? And so for me, I'm not just going to go take him jumping because he's going to get bored of it, because he can't do it all the time, or he's going to find something else to do. So it's you can teach a man to fish, you can give him a fish. Like, I'd rather have him earn it by cutting grass for 10 years and then being able to skydive, but not just giving it to him to where he doesn't appreciate it.
Yeah.
Cool. And just for the record, I really pushed on Rocket having a suit that looked like mine, but it was totally because I would get so emotionally burned out during the records of cutting people. Like by the end of it, I would be in tears, and so I got Rocket this little green suit because everybody was making jokes about like, when we see the green suit come out of the auditorium, we just head out of the hangar. If we know we fucked up, we just don't want to see JRuss. And I was like, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to walk around with a clipboard. Rocket's going to come with me in his little green suit, and he's going to have a plastic axe. And he's just going to walk up and tap people on the leg and be like, sit down. You're cut. And I didn't have to say anything, and nobody's going to get mad at Rocket. He's the cutest kid ever. And I could just write stuff on the clipboard, and then my job is done. Yeah. I don't have to be an emotional train wreck at the end of the record. So yeah, he did get a little green suit like mine, but in retrospect, it might have been better to get him one like his dad's. I don't know.
That's all good. No, I mean, with that story, it's all good. I mean, along those lines, I think it's kind of neat too. Matt Fry, who we're partnering with on this record, is very proud of not cutting people. So I feel like the architecture running into this record of having a very small bench and not putting so much external pressure on people, hopefully will yield a better team. More motivated team, as opposed to sending JRuss out there to cut people. Because, man, I remember when we cut the number to 171, and there was like so many people that were sticking their slots, and it was just that like Hail Mary pass of like, let's try to get a record, and like telling somebody to their face that they're not going to be on the record after they stuck it every single jump is got to be like the worst thing to do on the planet. I mean, I'm glad you did it and I didn't.
Yeah. Man, I was up on the stage and I said it, and I'm like, you guys didn't do anything wrong, and yet you're getting cut. And I had to stop talking because I was getting choked up. I'm like, this sucks. I'm gonna.
This sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate the architecture we've got this time.
Yeah.
Can you briefly explain why you had to cut them? Is it too involved, too difficult to explain?
Oh, well, what Rook is mentioning is like what happens sometimes at record attempts is, loosely termed pie crusting, where you've got this roundish formation and you pie crust by cutting the crust off of the outside. And that we had been struggling for a number of reasons on the last record attempts, and there was that we were running out of time, we're running out of jumps, and the collective decision was, hey, we're going to make it a little bit smaller and see if we can get a record, and then if we do, we'll go a little bit bigger again. But that involved, as Rook said, 30 some people that had been doing a pretty good job getting sat down, which is, it's bad enough getting cut when you did fuck up. When you didn't do anything and you get cut, it's not that much fun.
But right? Like if you fuck it up and you get sat down, when you're crushing it and you get the tap on the shoulder, you're like, this can't be true, right? And for a lot of people, this will be their major achievement in their career, right? Like that picture behind JRuss's head, like that's what they're going to put over their fireplace, and they're going to explain to their kids that their college fund is smaller because they spent so much money to get this photo, and that's what they did, and to just strip that away from somebody because we're trying this Hail Mary, like, man, you don't make a lot of friends doing records, and that is for sure.
Yeah.
Unless you get it. If you get it, you get all the friends in the world. But if you don't, oh boy, you get some memes and all kinds of stuff thrown at you.
Yeah. It's funny to me that happened, and you brought that up earlier, but just that I'm also the same kind of thing I understand where you say, oh, somebody asked me to do a fun belly team. Like, you mean fun like we're not going to try to win? Like, what's the point of that? And I'm in the same boat there. But I really enjoy the records because it's a chance for, you see so many people and hang out with friends and all that, but it's also a chance to have the camaraderie of like, I'm not trying to beat you at this moment. Like, I'm trying to help you get where we want to go. And I really appreciate that, whether or not we get the record. And I think that sort of the anger, or I don't know what you call it, but there was a little bit of toxicity after the last record that came out, and you're just like, man, number one, if there was a better way to do it, somebody tell me, because I don't want to be wrong any longer than I have to be. But if you believe that we're reasonable people, what do you think we're doing here? Like, we're trying. You're in your slot, I'm in my slot. Like, we're doing what we can. Yeah. I don't know. It's just it was weird to think that so many people were so focused on, if we don't get the record, I'm going to be pissed off, instead of like, man, I really enjoy all these people, and it's great to have these relationships and see friends that I never really get to see because they're in Australia or UK or whatever. That was, I think, my experience is maybe different than other people's. I'm not sure.
What was the toxicity? What do you mean? Like,
I think that those people really, they're angry because they didn't get what they wanted, right? So they're going to throw a temper tantrum like my 6-year-old does, thinking that if he cries long enough, we're going to give him the iPad. And so, but if you step back and you really think about, man, like, doing records is cool, right? Like, you're jumping out with all these people, all these airplanes, and some of the visuals are just incredible. Even when you're at the formation, like, we have this screen that you saw inside the foyer that plays the reel of the 164 way. And every now and again, I'll be walking by it when they're showing some of the inside POV footage, and I just look at it and I'm like, man, that's fucking cool. You know what I mean? Like, just looking around at that, and you're just like, God, that's so cool. And I think if they were to focus more on what, like, Jeanette put it away in a podcast where, like, when they got to do the championships in Paradise XP, she's like, man, I'm just so thankful that I get to do this. Right. And that to me struck me like very powerful, where like, yeah, it is fucking cool that we get to do this. You know what I mean? I think back to the kid that I read to at school, and he will probably never in his life get to do that. And we get to do that, and we're going to get mad about it. Man, like, you got to get kicked in the nuts. You know what I mean? Like, come on, get mad about that. Don't get mad about the fact that you didn't achieve a world record on a skydive that less than 0.1% of the world will ever do in their lives. Like, let's have that conversation.
Yeah. There's almost like I don't know if it's entitlement. That might not be the right word, but my brother, he worked at a church at one point, and the students in the ministry that he worked with, they weren't rich or wealthy by any means, but there were a lot of people who gave to that church so that those students could go to camp, so they could go to retreats, so they could go to baseball games, so they could do all this different stuff. And after 3 or 4 years of this, where people were constantly giving money so that the kids could do all these fun activities, there would be times when, for some reason, they didn't have the funds to take the kids to a Major League Baseball game. And they would get so upset and so angry and mad, like almost like, how dare you not take us to this? And my brother, he started realizing that they had created this attitude amongst these students of entitlement, and they actually had to like rein back how much, and they actually had to start making the students pay for a big chunk of anything that they did. They would always be responsible for at least half, or they would have to work to earn it and to be a part of it, to where they would actually appreciate. Because I sit here listening, I look at that picture behind JRuss, I listen to you guys talking, I'm like, man, what do I have to do I would love to be on one of these. I would love to be on one. Now, maybe if I got to be on 10 or 15 or 20, maybe I can be a jerk too. So I'd probably at some point have a bad attitude myself. But I think I'm like, man, when we get off the air, I'm going to beg JRuss, let me be on it. Let me be a part of this, because it sounds so fantastic.
We're building the team.
Yeah.
But I think maybe that's a little bit of it, the entitlement, and not appreciate. I mean, exactly what you said, Rook, just not appreciating the gift that it is to get to do that. I mean, dude, just when we get to, I'm riding up to altitude, I'm looking around like, I can't believe we're jumping out of an airplane today. Like, this is fantastic, man. All these people on the ground driving down the highway in their car, and here we are in an airplane getting to jump with our friends and laugh and goof off and have a great time, man. It's so fantastic.
Man, you guys know Steph and I worked in Dubai, and we were there for a little while. And in the beginning, there wasn't a Skydive Dubai. It was just a few of us coaching the Crown Prince on how to fly in the tunnel. And he is a world-class horse racer. And every once in a while, you'd have to go support the race. Not have to, you kind of volunteer, but there are only like 6 or 8 of us at the time. And hey, I got a horse race. Does anybody want to come like drive the car? And you hand me water, and it's a 100-mile race and it goes on forever. And so a bunch of us went, sure, we're going to drive. It's fun. You're driving trucks through the desert and handing them water once in a while. They dump it on their horse. And he happened to win. And I don't know how many of us helped out that day, but I'm going to say 6 or 8 or whatever the full staff was. He gave everybody a gift for helping out. And there was one couple that brought their little girl, I don't know what she was, 4 or 5 at the time. And he gave her an equal gift to what the rest of us got. And I don't necessarily need to say the amount, but it was very generous for one day of just helping this guy out. And the next day we show up to work, and there's a female there. Again, that's not important, but it was like, did you guys hear that the child got the same gift that we did? Yeah, I heard that. What the fuck? Like, just started bitching and like, that kid shouldn't get anything and blah, 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 blah. And I was just like, can you hear yourself? Like, what are you talking about? Who cares? We just got this huge cash bonus for driving cars in the desert. It was super fun in the first place. Like, you had nothing to do. It was just, and kind of along the lines of what you guys are both saying, like sometimes you just can't predict the behavior of people. But I think like Rook, I was just really surprised after the last one that it came out with some poisonous stuff. But I'm hoping that for the next one that, I don't know, that people see the bigger picture, I guess. I don't know what the right way to say it is. We'll see.
I look forward to the briefing. And, like when we do the records, it's always like there's 2 goals. Goal 1 is everybody goes home safe, right? I don't want to call anybody's parents. And goal 2 is going to get a record. Well, I'm going to put goal 3, and it's going to be waiting to see the memes from a few people at the conclusion of this event. And I won't call them out, but they know who they are.
Yeah.
So first, everybody goes home. The second, we're going to get a record. And the third is we're going to see the memes that these kids put out.
Not the memes we want, but apparently the memes we deserve.
For sure.
There you go.
I mean, if you do it long enough, you just roll it off your back. Like, I don't really sleep over it.
Roll
Yeah,
the
that's like
shoulders.
don't read the comments.
Yeah. Oof. Yeah. Well, the other question, because Chris said this, and this is maybe the last one. I know we've been going a little while, but I'm curious, Rook, because a lot of people, when they come to Scottish Chicago, and I have the same issue, and maybe you do too, I don't know, but you've been talking about it longer, so maybe you've got it. Chris talked to me afterwards and was a little bit gushy about it. It's the first time there, and it's this big boogie, and I mean, it didn't run flawlessly, right? We had the plane issue, we had the power outage on the biggest day of the year for Scottish Chicago, like people running around with generators, and we didn't skip a beat, and I don't think we skipped a beat. For the most part, the planes kept flying, and we kept getting people up in the air. But Chris, your relaying to me of your experience afterwards was very similar, um, very in line with what I think I get from a lot of people when they come to Chicago for the first time. How do you quantify what makes Scottish Chicago what it is, which is this super? It's like this never land of skydiving, and it's insane to me still. Like when I go there, and I just like the stress kind of rolls off, and it's green grass, and it's tons of space, and it's good facilities, and nice people, and the campground. And how do you quantify that to people? And I guess this is kind of for you as well, Rook, but like what? Because I really struggle with like it's the greatest drop zone I've ever been to. Yeah, but why? Uh, like the expression that comes to mind is that the sum is more than the parts, and there's just something kind of magical about it. And I know this is really self-serving for Rook, but what do you say when people are like, oh, I've never been there? How do you quantify the specialness that you think this place occupies?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a couple part question. When people ask me, "Oh, I've never been to Skydive Chicago," the first thing I tell them is like, "You got to come twice. The first time you come during an event because you'll see the machine in motion, right? And you'll see the Saturdays of Summerfest where you're right, the power went out and we never stop because we have figured out how to keep the internet working. And if the internet keeps working, the world never stops. So if you keep the internet, some screens working, and then eventually get the bathrooms working in that order,
Mm,
you can keep things going. But come during an event, you'll see the machine in motion, and it's really impressive. And the second time you come during a random day, and you'll get to hang out with the staff and get to come to a barbecue, and you get to say more than hi to us, and you can develop a relationship. Because I feel like the second visit is a little bit more personable, where in my network of friends, I have my really, really good friends. I have my friends, and then I have the people I say hello to. And unfortunately, when you come to me at an event and there's 700 people there, I'm probably going to remember you as a hello friend. And then when you come to a random day, we can, nurture a relationship and, share stories and maybe jumps or whatever. But I tell my managers this is that we're passionate skydivers that enjoy making memories, and we kind of happen to skydive to do that. It's why we Skydive Chicago are in business, is to make memories, because we understand, like, we hear the stories of people that have gotten out of the sport of skydiving, and they always say, man, Rook, the time at the drop zone was the best time of my life. And maybe it was because they weren't married and or they didn't have kids yet, or they didn't have the 9 to 5 job yet. But I hear that a lot. And it just goes back to those memories, right? And so I want to make sure that we never stop trying to produce those memories for people. And it's top to bottom. I tell my team that, like, I don't put anybody higher up than anybody else. So if you're scrubbing toilets, you're no higher or lower than the guy flying the airplane, than the person that's checking you in for your tandem. Because if any one of those pieces isn't good, the whole brand suffers, right? Like if you don't have a toilet to poop on, that's a bummer, right? If your spot sucks, that's a bummer. If the person in manifest is a bitch, that sucks, right? And so if we can be a little bit passionate about what we do and know that the ultimate goal is for everybody to leave here with those memories that in 10 years will never go away as the best time of their life, I think that radiates in what we do. And again, I kind of circle back to what we talked about earlier, where I'm envious of those people that they're not like me that grew up in skydiving. They grew up in a different world, found skydiving, maybe took the blue pill in the matrix, but love what they do. And, we treat each other with respect. And, I think that goes a long way. And we're just simply simplify it. We're just passionate about what we do. I like jumping. I like people leaving here with good memories, and I don't want that to go away. Like I almost feel like I put the passion in front of a spreadsheet, meaning like there's so many times that I don't put making sure profit is number one versus like making sure we're safe and then making sure that people leave here happy.
Cool. Thank you.
Did that answer your question?
I mean, kind of. I mean, it's really a subjective response, right? But I definitely like the part about visiting twice. I don't know that I've ever said that to anybody, but for myself, like when we first started training there, all I had seen was the machine in motion, and it was an interesting time, to see a random Tuesday that nothing's going on, and you sit down and talk to the pilots because there's clouds rolling through, and you get to know people.
We do this AFP in a week, which is like people can get their license in a week. And I know JRuss, you're familiar with it, but like it all stemmed from being on a beach in Mexico. I got so many people. We had a drop zone down there for a few years. I'll make it short. They were like, "Hey, how long does it take to get your license?" And I'm like, "Well, how much room's on your Visa card?" And so all we did was just package up this thing that it's just in a week. So you come here on a Friday, you take the course. We do 4 or 5 jumps a day, and then you graduate. And we do one of those during Summerfest. And I can only think to myself, like, okay, you do your 2 tandems on a Saturday, you come back, do your AFP week in a week on Summerfest, and then you come to the random Tuesday. And you're like, are you closed? You know what I mean? There's like only one plane going,
There were people that got their license during Summerfest.
Incredible, right?
Dude, that would be like crazy to get your license during Summerfest.
Right.
Like 5, 6 planes going at the same time. And
oh my gosh.
I mean, that's a testament to how well it's run too, right? Because if somebody can be on student status and mix with 5 airplanes running, like it's not the chaos hectic that boogies used to be.
No, that's what I was saying. That's exactly what I was saying. Well, JRuss, I've got to make an attempt to answer your question, if that's okay.
Oh, of course.
About quantifying it. You said it's almost magical, and I know what you mean, but I'm going to say it's not magical because of exactly what Rook said. It's things that I can clearly identify, and he said spreadsheet. It's intentional. And when you go to Skydive Chicago, one of the first things I realize is that, wow, this place is super clean. Everything is in its place. Everything has a place and is in its place. There's order. It's professional. People act like they want me here. And I didn't hear, I mean, this is not, I'm not saying this is a horrible thing, but I didn't hear like death metal or screamo in the packing area. I didn't see people walking around in their underwear. I didn't see people, I didn't hear people cussing and screaming across the packing floor and talking about obscene things. And I mean, if people want to do that, that's fine. They can do that. But that is a different experience when you go to a place that looks the way that Skydive Chicago looks and people act in a very professional way. It's a different experience. It's just a different experience. And to me, it's very quantifiable. And I said within the first 2 days, I was like, wow, this is the nicest drop zone that I've been to. I haven't been to a bunch, but it's the nicest one that I've been to because of all those things. And like you said, I've been to a few manifests where the girls acted like I had just killed their favorite cat. And all I did was walk up, so.
Yeah. I've been to a lot of different drop zones and it's still my favorite one.
One of the coolest things I feel we've done to increase the Zen state of the drop zone is that I eliminated all of the PA calls. There's still some when necessary, but historically there was, hey, load 2, you're on a 10-minute call. Load 2, you're on a 5-minute call. Load 2, go to the boarding area. Tandem students, John, Mike, and Jane, go to the tandem student area. And then there was all these cafe orders that would start getting thrown into the mix too. So then what you realize is that PA system just never isn't yelling at you. And we eliminated with Burble, we've eliminated all the calls. And one of the testaments of that doing that was we don't make calls during Summerfest anymore. And so if we can run 5 airplanes and not have to make a single PA call for a load time, and people mostly make their airplane, it eliminates all of these just screaming announcements on you all day. And I feel like my sanity is so much better than just hearing all this chatter all day long. And it's brutal.
That's interesting. I didn't even think about it.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
No calls.
Cool. Yeah, and so national is coming up. So when we did it in 2022, there's still rules that you have to make a verbal call for a 10 and a 5 minutes. So upon seeing that and having my sister on the board, I sent her a quick message saying we need to eliminate that. And so this year will be the first year that we do not have to make calls for nationals. You know, we have I think 15 TVs that has the load screen on it. Plus you have it on your phone. So you're just living under a rock if you don't know what call it is. But this will be the first year that we don't make any calls. And I'm so looking forward to that, because nationals was brutal, because you got team 401, team 402, team 403, team 405. You're on a 15-minute call. Team 401, team 402, you're on a 10-minute call. Team 401, it just never stops. You know, you're just like,
yeah, it's like a swim meet. You ever been to a swim meet, a really busy swim meet? That's how it is. It's just constant PA
it's constant
all the time.
barraging of screaming.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting on it here. It's been like an hour and a half, even though I miss a chunk. But Rook, how do people keep up with you? Like, how do they find you? Are you on social media? How would you like them to know what's going on at Skydive Chicago?
Yeah, the best thing is to just be just to like Skydive Chicago on the social channels. I have a Facebook, but I think I'm tapped out of friends right now. I can do 5,000 and then I'm there. So I secretly hate social media. I'd rather just talk to people, but I don't have an Instagram. I have Facebook, but if you want to get involved with the drop zones or what we're doing, we put everything on Facebook for the drop zone. So Skydive Chicago is on all of the social channels, YouTubes, all that stuff. And we do a pretty good job of keeping content rolling through there. So if you want to keep up with me or the drop zone or what we're doing, that's the best route. Of course, our website at skydiveschicago.com as well.
Awesome.
Cool. All right, Chris. No, it was my turn.
It's all you.
Yeah, cool. Okay, it's been an hour and a half. Rook, thank you very much for joining us. This is 30 minutes longer than we normally let anybody talk, but you had good things to say. So, and for everybody out there, thanks for joining us for another episode. And hopefully you found this one interesting and informative about the what descriptor did I use? It was something like glamorous, but it wasn't glamorous. Rook Nelson.
Illustrious. Did you say illustrious?
Illustrious Rook Nelson. Yeah, perfect. You know, you've gotten your skydiving history and education today, and he didn't even have to say like in the beginning or anything. Like, even though he's been jumping
even
longer
though he was
have.
there in the beginning.
I learned my long talking from you, JRuss.
Right on. All right, guys.
I appreciate it.
Rook, thank you so much for joining us, man. It's super nice to have you.
Cool. And we'll see you guys next week. See you, everybody.
All right. Bye, guys.